Obviously, Keith, a lot of Rangers fans are having their say on this in the comment section. JM says, celebrated the late goal against Livi like it was a Champions League winner. So embarrassing. Craigie insists that win against Livi ain't no turning point. That comes when Martin leaves. And Scott goes as far as to say he's talking about Russell Martin, gaslighting the fans and media. Look, he needed to win, obviously, Russell Martin yesterday, Keith, but does it really change much?
I think you can see from no, it doesn't, and you can see that from the comments there. He's a curious one, isn't he, Russell Martin? He's not helping himself now. I'm sure that he feels a little bit bruised by the stick that he's been getting now, whether that's from the stands, from the Rangers supporters, whether it's in newspapers or shows like this, or radio, TV, whatever. I'm sure he's bruised, but he's got a really unfortunate way of showing that. I think seeing the press conference, he looks like, I have to go through this. I don't want to be in here. I don't want to answer your questions. I don't really respect any of your opinions. That's the vibe now, rightly or wrongly. That's the vibe I get out of him. He's a man that doesn't really want to be there. Now, I don't mean when I say be there, I don't mean necessarily in charge of Rangers. I mean, he's said again, he restated at the weekend that it really means everything to him, that he really wants to succeed in the job. So you take him at his word on that. But then you look at some of the decisions that he's been making and you think, really? Because some of them, you're looking and wondering, are you wanting to hang around here? Or do you want a decision to be taken out of your hands? Do you want a nice big payoff check? Some of the things have been so strange to understand. Some of his decision making, some of the fallouts he's had with guys like Nico Raskin, it just doesn't feel right at all. But you know what? He right now, if he does want to do this job, if he does want to make a success, if he's telling the truth about all that stuff, then he has to cling to something like what happened at the weekend when they got an injury time winner, and hope that there's a bounce comes on the back of it. But I just don't know. I even look at the way that Rangers played, and he said it was a brilliant first half. It wasn't. I mean, what you can't do is tell people that understand the environment, understand the club. You can't tell them that black is white and just say, all right, okay, I'll go along with that. That wasn't a brilliant performance against Livingston. In fact, for the first 10, 15 minutes, Rangers were second best. And, I think Butland makes a great save from Stevie May. I thought for 10, 15 minutes, Livingston looked like they were on top of that game. Yes, I think for 25 minutes of that half, Rangers they come into it. They looked a lot more lively, aggressive. There was more purpose to the possession, which is something that you've been looking at all the way through this season, and it's been all possession, no purpose. This was far more like it from Rangers in terms of trying to get forward, trying to get on the front foot, trying to create opportunities. But it didn't look anything like the sort of stuff that Russell Martin had said that he was going to bring. It almost looked like a bunch of players doing their thing off the cuff a little bit, and maybe that's a good thing. Because what they've been asked to do up until this point clearly hasn't been working. And then they come out for the second half, and it was much more like what Russell Martin has been producing. In other words, they don't go forward. They move the ball around, they pass it back the way, they pass it amongst each other. They're not creating anything. There's no intensity to the way that they're trying to attack teams. I think it was it not Mikey Moore come off the bench, and he had the first shot on goal of the second half, and that was, I'm going to say, maybe 78 minutes or something like that. So there was no intensity, and you wonder, was that what Russell Martin? But it can't be, because he's then sitting there saying that they were brilliant in the first half and not so good second, blaming sticky pitch and all this stuff. I can't work it out. He leaves me scratching my head, Daniel. I just don't get it. I'll be honest, I didn't get the appointment in the first place. I've said over and over on here, there was nothing in his managerial CV which merit merited his inclusion in the discussion about potential Rangers manager. Nothing. On the contrary, what happened at Southampton last season was close to being an unmitigated disaster, and yet that was his most recent spell as a manager. And for some reason, Kevin Thelwell and Greta Steinson reached the conclusion that he was the ideal man for Ibrox. So, yeah, I'm at a loss as to explain a whole bunch around Russell Martin, the appointment, what he's trying to get out of his team, some of the decisions that's been made. It's a real curious mix, and I can't fathom it.
You're not alone, Keith, in being at a loss. There's plenty of comments coming in of that, sharing that sentiment. JM says the anger is building towards the 49ers. They need to face the reality of their mistakes, i.e. Thelwell, Stewart, Martin. Scott says, I can't think of one area of the team he's improved. The recruitment isn't looking good either at the moment. Paul says Russell Martin's ego doesn't back up his managerial talent and tactics. But we've also had some comments in as well. Mark says you could say the exact same thing about Celtic. And I wanted to talk about Celtic as well, about their game against Hibs at the weekend. And finally, Scott says Young Moore needs to go back to Spurs. Not the right environment for him. Too toxic. It's not his fault. And on that, I would just add as well, Keith, why would you play? Why are they developing Mikey Moore ahead of Finlay Curtis, who was brilliant, I thought, at the start of the season?
You're asking the wrong person. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, of course. You've got a young kid that plays wide, that scores goals whenever he gets a chance, that looks as if he might be a really exciting, homegrown prospect, straight out your academy.
Yep.
And you play a young boy for Spurs in front of him. Now, that's not anything against Mikey Moore. I think when he arrived, I think Rangers fans would be probably quite excited about that, because he has been described as a generational talent by the people round about Spurs, and he made the breakthrough into the first team under Ange Postecoglou. So yeah, I can understand why you might want to take a look at him, but I said previously, Daniel, and I think it's actually bad for the boy's development that he's been pitched in with so much anger around just now. That's not the place for a young boy that doesn't really understand. I mean, you can make more of a case for what's his name, the young Finlay Curtis.
Aye.
You make more of a case because at least he's familiar with the environment. At least he's familiar with, and he understands. I mean, Mikey Moore's just come in and must be thinking, what hell is this? And I felt it was quite unkind to have him, to throw him out there into the firing line. And I thought you could see that he was clearly struggling with it. And I mentioned last week, Dan, it could well be that there's something stipulated in the contract, the loan agreement, that if he's fit, he has to get game time. But I think that's a conversation you would have manager to manager, that you should be on to Spurs and saying, look, this is actually going to be quite unhelpful. I think we might be damaging here, and it might be better just to take him, out. Even if that was stipulated in the contract, I think that Thomas Frank would probably be in complete agreement. That he's there to improve, not to go into his shell. So it was no surprise that he didn't start at Livingston. Antman did on that right-hand side for Rangers. Looked okay, but not probably what Rangers would be expecting from him or hoping for him after the way that he introduced himself to the crowd at Rangers in his debut. Looked as if he was going to be a cracker. But everybody looks as if their confidence is fragile, don't they? They look like a real weak, fragile lot just now, this Rangers team.